I'm supposed to be patient because of my age. And
not supposed to, but keep going.
Like,
but you're ambitious?
Yeah, exactly. And I need to go for it. And the thing is...
Dude, think about me. Think about how ambitious I am.
I know.
And I push patience. Like, the balance of ambition and patience is everything.
Yeah.
But the part that you're not struggling with ambition.
Right.
You're struggling with patience.
Yeah. And the reason why I say that is because that's exactly what happened. So I started on the...
I want to buy a multi-billion-dollar sports franchise. Ambition's not my problem.
I get it.
My strength is patience.
Yeah.
Your problem isn't your ambition. How do I balance ambition and patience? Easy. Lean into patience. Because ambition's easy. I'm just unbelievably passionate about people figuring out the framework, and then more importantly, figuring out why they're not doing the framework, and then more importantly, what are you trying to accomplish? That's the question, because we have to accomplish happiness. That has to be the goal. And if you actually pressured yourself to be happy versus pressuring yourself to be a success, then you have a totally different conversation with yourself. And when you start doing that for yourself, not to prove it to your spouse or your siblings or your parents or the people you went to school with, then it gets really good. It gets really good when it gets really quiet. And it's super quiet for me. I don't hear the claps and I don't hear the boos. I just navigate. I love my process. I love the pain of being an entrepreneur. I love that it's lonely. I love the game. I just want you to love the game. The great blessing of my life is that I don't judge myself. I hold myself accountable. Like, it doesn't mean you go and be reckless. I'm not delusional when I suck. It's just that I just don't overjudge it. Yeah. Everyone's tearing themselves down. The fuck are you doing that for? Everybody else is doing it for you. Stop beating yourself up. Reverse engineering individuals at scale is something I'm very passionate about, having all these different employees, and there's so many different dynamics. And I think it is a fine line between the two is better than one, which I think the optimism that breeds, I think is incredible. And I think it's always better to lean into optimism versus pessimism and cynicism. But where I'm about to go with the rest of that sentence is actually the answer to confidence. I think the number one vulnerability in society is delusion. I think that parents are creating a remarkable level of delusion over the last 20 years because parents have become so micromanaging of their kids' feelings and actually know their day-to-days too much, and are trying to protect them from the world, which unfortunately is fundamentally impossible. And I believe that we have 1 to 2 full generations right now that are closer to zoo animals than they are humans. And so as I was listening to the stories, as we were talking here, I think one of the great things that is true about the three of us upbringing was we were in frameworks because of circumstances where losing wasn't demonized or protected against. It was the merit of the outcome, which got us comfortable with the idea of, which meant by the time we were actually 22, we actually knew that that was part of the variable. And it is remarkably stunning to me to watch the enormity of 22-year-olds that go into the world who demonize and fear losing or setbacks because they've been in an over-coddled fake framework environment where grades have been the only variable, or 7th place trophies feel close to a 1st place trophy, or mommy and daddy pay for Uber or the apartment, and we are just in a very entitled ecosystem. I think the biggest thing you can do for those 3-year-olds to create self-esteem and confidence is to make them be in an environment where losing is reality and almost even put on a pedestal without it being something that they dwell on post the outcome. People always say they're going to do the biggest epidemic in the world is people talking, not doing. And especially now, and people always do that, but now what social media does is expose people. It doesn't change people. All the hate in the system, that's exposing. Twitter didn't make you evil, you're evil, you know? And same with talking and not doing. Twitter, Instagram didn't make you waste time and not do. don't delete your app off your phone and think you're being productive now. That's the byproduct of what's going on here. You're just going to watch TV instead. You're just going to play Fortnite instead. You're just going to go to coffee shops and pretend you're working instead. People always talk. Today, with all the things that have happened to me, I get emails on Facebook from friends I went to high school with, often starting with, Gary, you're so lucky. I reply to every single one of them, all of them, with the reply of an opening line first. Jan, great to see you again. You look great. Kid's super cute. P.S. I am super not lucky. Let me remind you, Rick, remember when we graduated college and you went to the Jersey Shore every weekend and hooked up with chicks and drank beer? I worked. You know, when I was 22 to 28, I was making $35,000 to $55,000 a year, but I had no expenses. I didn't go on vacations. I didn't buy fancy things. So I saved my money. And then when I had hundreds of thousands of dollars. I didn't have millions. I had hundreds of thousands of dollars because I didn't spend anything. And then I started making $100,000 a year and $150,000 a year. And by the time I was 33, 34, when I had that opportunity, I'd still not bought a home. I was still in an apartment. I was 33 years old and I was renting. And because I was saving cash to go on the offense. And I knew something would happen one day, and it did. And so when I had a chance to invest in those companies, I put hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions, but those hundreds made millions, made tens of millions. And so that's it, nothing crazy, I didn't have any crazy advantage. There's a lot of people that make $55,000 a year when they're 23. The problem is they go to Coachella and they want to buy a watch and they want to buy a BMW, and I didn't. So I ate for 13 years, and then I had a moment and I struck. I stood in front of this company in September and rolled out a new vision called the Vayner Volume Model. 98% of them thought I was out of my mind. Okay. Didn't believe in it at all. Thought that I'm like the crazy founder and like I'm silly, but like when it becomes real, so just lead. Anytime you have full buy-in from your employees, you're in a dangerous place.
Just make the video after hours. Why do you say that? So let's say
it means that there should be some sort of friction from somebody who's leading up in front and sees everything and is driving a company versus people that work in it who are in the, they're different. Like my job is to be like, oh, there's an iceberg. I'm going to move this way. And everybody who's downstairs is like, what do you mean? The water's been super clear the whole time. I'm like, no, there's an iceberg. But they're in the basement. Yeah. They're like, it's been such a nice ride. Like this has been so smooth. Leaders need to understand what's happening next. Employees are executing on the current and overvalue the past. There's something I've been thinking a lot about lately, which is like with everything that's going on with me, I talk a lot about not hearing the boos. I don't give a fuck what you think, but it goes both ways. I also don't hear the accolades. Like so many people, as my notoriety and awareness grows and things that are going on with me, they're always like, man, you're so humble. And every time I hear somebody say that, I say it's because I can't hear your boos. That is literally what happens. When somebody, because they don't expect it, especially the way I am on video and on stage, they get confused by like the humility when they actually get to know me.
Sure.
And I'm like, and it's so funny how intuitive I feel that's completely laddered to me not hearing people that shit on me. I think for me, because I was an immigrant, because I had bad grades, my whole life I was losing, that by the time I was a grown-up, losing and fear didn't mean anything to me. So I got lucky in so much adversity as a child. I think if you haven't had that, or even if you had that, you still fear it because of the way your parents judged, you have to practice. It's, like you have to practice doing things that you are scared of. It's very true. It's like when people talk to me about fear, it feels so heavy. I'm like, it's like swimming or kissing a boy. You were scared of that when you were young until you did it, and then you were, or talking to me, right? But then practice gets you there. So you have to practice things that feel scary, and then you'll get more used to them. It's the truth. I think that I could play basketball every day of my life, from the time I was 15 and put in 15 hours a day, and I think I'd be really good. I'd have a much better handle. I'd shoot better. I would have been more competitive with you on the boat that day. But would I have been good enough to be in the NBA? Absolutely not.
Maybe D3.
Maybe.
College.
Maybe. And I do think right now that everybody thinks they can be an entrepreneur. And so my point was, it's much more talent than the current conversation. I don't think you can read the School of Greatness and my books and all these other books and watch Skillshares and watch Chase Jarvis and listen to Ferris and read Branson and even go to business school and have mentors and go to Y Combinator, and then all of a sudden, just because of that, you become a great entrepreneur. I think of it like the music industry. Think about all the kids that are born into, your Clive Davis's grandson or your Whitney Houston's daughter, or you have nothing but access. You're in the studio all the time. You learn the business. But if you don't have the chops, if you don't have the vocals, you're only going to go so far. It's much more talent than people realize. I see it every day. And the video I made was like, look, you have to be okay that by pouring in 18 hours a day and learning everything might only allow you to build a business that makes $100,000 a year.
Right.
There is an absolute misconception that the American dream is entrepreneurship and everybody can do it. The difference between entrepreneurship and football is everybody who's listening right now or watching can start a business. Not everybody can go work out for the New York Yankees. There's a system. There's no system in place for entrepreneurship.
Anyone can do it.
That at 16 or 22 stops you and says, hey man, you're going to lose a load of money and be miserable. and literally, I'll be honest with you, I'm starting this conversation for quite a noble reason. This is not me to impose my will and say, look how special I am. As a matter of fact, I'd rather think it's been the hard work than the talent. I'd rather think it was something I did versus mom and dad had sex at the right moment. I'd much rather think that. I'm careful to not give advice that I know is uniquely something that I was gifted with. Like, how do I tell you that, here's how it actually works? And it almost started happening. It didn't happen. Like, I actually get goosebumps. Like real heavy goosebumps when I hear something that I know feels right. What's the advice there? Hey, Johnny, start getting goosebumps. There's certain things that I can't talk about because I know they're not practical. They're intuitive to me, right? And so, yes, for me, it's the balance of, I feel like something's happening, but it always comes from seeing stuff. Like it's going to the candy store with my little guy and hearing 4 8-year-old girls talk about slime, and then later go to Shake Shack and hear another 2 8-year-old boys talk about slime, and I'm like, slime? And then I search it and this is like a year ago, and I search it, it's 18 months ago, and I search it on Instagram to see hashtags, I search on YouTube, I search Google, I'm like, this is real. There's something happening. Spinners, right? Like, fads are easy for me, and I think what I've been good at in business is trying to decide what's a fad and what's an actual business. So something like Social Cam. I downloaded it and got very serious about it in 2011. I didn't know even the founders of Social Cam. It wasn't that I knew if Social Cam was going to be big. I didn't invest in it. I didn't go after it. But I knew video on the mobile device was going to be big. So when Vine got hot very quickly, I was an early mover, an early advocate of Vine and Vine influencers, right? Which, by the way, Vine influencers are absolutely the precursor to this Snapchat, Instagram thing we're dealing with right now. That's where they came from first. Instagram was photos. Then when Vine was dying a little bit, they all moved over to Instagram. Instagram was smart and made 1-minute videos, and that's when you saw the shift, and that became the seed and the foundation of Instagram influencers, which is an enormous billion-dollar industry now. Everyone's like, how are you so early? It's because I put in the work. 2011, Social Cam, learn how video on mobile works. 2013 comes along, Vine pops. I'm like, that's right. I lived through YouTube 2006-07, being a YouTube celebrity for my wine show, so I knew what it looked like. I saw that the Vine kids were that. I flew to LA and met Brittany Furlan and King Batch. I put in the work. And so it's intuition, but it's also putting in the work. When you're scared or nervous or not confident, a lot of people have DNA that makes them overcompensate. I call it a cactus. They're a cactus. They're tough on the outside, but they're soft on the inside. The reason I keep telling everybody kindness is a strength is I'm super nice and super passive, actually, and like I'm willing to let people take advantage of me because I'm strong inside. So the question is, you have to just know if you're nervous, if you're using, fake confidence to actually hide something you're concerned about. Humility is an incredible strength that many men and many people never want to show. Guys, I put out content more about me passing on Uber and losing than I do about the things I win on. Everybody else puts out content of fake wins. That's the difference.